For the past 8 years, as a occasional, I was going to say part-time, but not even a part-time, but I'm an occasional photographer in my spare times. And I am asked to take a picture at the events like weddings and proms and sporting events, and as well as various family portraitures. And as many of you know, that I enjoy photography, and although I never consider myself creative, these occasions give me a creative outlet, and also helps me to maintain some of the photography skills I acquired over the years. And through these experiences, I have learned not only how to take pictures, but also what it takes to be a photographer. And one of the things that I have learned over these years that I think is important is how and what to pack for various events, especially when I am shooting an outside event. And as a rule, when I am asked to do a photo shoot, I go to a venue a day before actual shooting, around the same time, so that around the same time I'll be shooting. And this helps me to see the lights and the shadows, and which affect the composition and the location of the photo shoot tremendously. And so what I usually do is that when I go there and I try to think about what I can do, and because this process helps me to think about what kind of equipment I need to bring. So if I have to block lights, then I need assistant and some diffusers, which often is a white or gray, the fabric to diffuse light, especially when the sunlight is very strong. And what is the direction of light at that time? And do I need to reflect light? If so, I need to bring a reflector. And also, which lens do I need to bring? Is that the small place that I can't bring a long lens, or do I have to bring a longer lens so that I can take a picture far away? And if the location is not easily accessible, then I need to carry all those equipments, and that means I need to think about how I can minimize the load so that I won't be worn out throughout the event, and so forth. There are so many factors and elements that I need to think about when I go to a photo shoot, and I pack my bags accordingly. And as I look at the bags, as I'm packing for the event, and I always ask myself these 3 questions. There's 3 questions. First question is that, do I have what it takes to do the job? In other words, do I have enough things in my bag? And the second question I ask myself is, do I have too much and packing unnecessary things? In other words, do I have too much in the bag? And the third question, finally, I ask myself is, am I ready to shoot with the equipment I have? The last 2 weeks, we have been examining Luke chapter 9, verse 23, which we are using as a theme verse for the stewardship campaign. In this passage, Jesus clearly lays out how a person can be his disciple in one very simple sentence, where Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. So the first step of being Jesus' disciple is to have a desire to come after him. Such desire is to be nurtured in the community of faith, like a church, and with God as the initiator of such desire. God, even though those things, we are the one who are going into the life of faith, but God is the one who initiates our first step. And the second step is to deny ourselves. To deny is not just to simply suppress our wants. A biblical self-denial is to say no to ourselves so that we can say yes to Jesus Christ. And this is an emphatic yes to follow Jesus, which can be achieved when we truly know the depth of God's love in Jesus Christ. And the third step is, as we see in the next portion of today's passage, is to take up his cross daily. Take up his cross daily. And before we examine the third step today, I would like to pose this question. Are we ready? Are we ready to be a disciple? Are we ready to be a disciple? As we examine today's passage, specifically the portion that says take up his cross daily, we will find out what it means to be ready to be Jesus' disciples. As Christians, we understand that we are to live by faith, whose biblical definition, according to the Hebrews chapter 11, verse 1, is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of the things not seen. Again, what is the meaning of faith? Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of the things not seen. And that means that we are to live based not on our present knowledge, but on our assurance and understanding of God's promised future. We can obtain this through our faith in Jesus Christ. But, however, this is not to say that we don't have to prepare for things that await in us in the future. In other words, that the Christian faith is not a blind faith, which is more like a wish than a hope for the future. Christian faith is not a blind faith. That we are to hope for the future is not a wish. Although we know that it is not possible to know everything about a future, but as a responsible Christian, we are still called to do as best as we can to prepare for it. We have been discussing Luke chapter 9, verse 23 as the main theme for the stewardship campaign this month. Here Jesus said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. And he says the same thing to his disciples, again, in the Luke chapter 14, verse 27 through 33. In the 27, he said, if whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciples. Again, he said that whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciples. The one word is different here, but the essence is exactly the same. What Jesus is saying in the chapter 9, verse 23, and the Luke chapter 14, verse 27. But here in this passage, in the chapter 14, that Jesus also gives us some analogies of what it means to bear one's own cross. So Jesus continues in Luke chapter 14, verse 28 through 32. He said, for which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and account the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build, and was not able to finish. Or what king going out to encounter another king in war will not sit down and first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So there is a cost of being a disciple of Jesus Christ. That is to say, there are something that we need to let go of as well as to take up if we decide to follow Jesus. Jesus calls such cost as cross. Cost is a cross, and the cross is a cost we have to pay, cost we have to bear, and a cost we have to carry to be his disciples. And what we need to realize here in this passage, though, is that Jesus does not say, take up my cross. He doesn't say we are to take up my cross. In other words, Jesus' cross. The cross that Jesus carried has very special meaning, which is an expiatory, the power wrought by the death of Jesus Christ. In other words, in the plain word, is that the cross that he carried represent the Jesus' redemptive work on the cross. What Jesus has done on the cross for those people whose sin need to be forgiven. So in other words, the cross which brought forgiveness to the sins and the burdens of everyone who believes in Jesus Christ. And that is the meaning of the Jesus' cross, his cross. But Jesus said, what he said here is not take up my cross, but he said take up his own cross. In other words, that he is talking about our own cross that we have to carry. The cost is different from person to person. The cost I have to pay is different from what you have to pay. When I become a Christian, my cost to pay was my relationship with my family. Even though right now we have in a better term, but at the beginning that we have some awkwardness remained between my parents and myself. And that was a cost I had to pay. And that might be different for each one of you. Maybe that's the relationship with your spouse. Maybe that's the relationship with your friends, or maybe people with the work, or maybe that's the financial aspect of life. That might be your cross. That might be your cost of being Christ's disciple. So the cost, our crosses we carry is different and unique to each person. So what is the cost? What do you mean by that? What do you mean by exactly what it means in our life to be the part of the Church of Jesus Christ? What does that look like? So desiring and denying oneself, then now taking up our own cross means that we are to count the cost of being a disciple of Jesus Christ. On a Wednesday evening, we are learning what it means to be an eco-church, a covenant order of evangelical Presbyterians, the new denomination we joined the last month. And then we heard from the people who went to the ECO National Gathering, and we went over the ECO's core values in that class. And then last week, we have discussed the theology of ECO Church. And this Wednesday, we will discuss the ECO's polity. And as I was preparing for that session, and I came across the definition of a church member in an ECO church, which is written on the polity of ECO, which I believe is a great summary. Although it is not perfect, it is not the complete, but this gives us a glimpse of meaning of what it takes for us to be a disciple of Jesus Christ as a member of a church. So according to the polity, being a member, or as a matter of fact, at the ECO Church, we are not called to be a member of the church, but we are called a covenant partners. A covenant partners. So according to the polity, being a covenant partner of an ECO church is described as the following. Through baptism, an individual is joined to the church universal, the body of Christ. Through the covenant of membership, an individual is joined to the local congregation and is able to be fully involved in its mission to the local community and the world. So in other words, as we just decide to just be the follower of Jesus Christ, as we became the disciple of Jesus Christ, we are to commit ourselves fully involved in its mission, church's mission, to the local community as well as the ministry in the world. And it continues, each covenant partner shall strive to be faithful to Christ by participating in the congregation's worship, a fellowship, and a service on an ongoing basis. In other words, this is not occasional things that we are to participating in an event, participating in activity of the Church of Jesus Christ in an ongoing basis, continuous involvement. And also it said the faithfulness in Christ involves each covenant partner's dedication of time and talents for the congregation's mission and ministry in accordance to the gifts that God has bestowed upon him or her. So in other words, God has given us, each one of us, a gift that we are to use for his sake. It's not, those gifts are not to use for our own glory. Those gifts are not to glorify ourselves, but those gifts are given to each single one of us to give glory to him. And the polity continues. They said that faithfulness also involves the stewardship of finance. As each covenant partner grows in the grace of giving, financial support of the congregation, the mission, and the ministry should grow, along with the tangible support for other ministries that advance God's kingdom. And it is important for all of us to understand the financial aspect of the church's life. Because if you read the Bible, if you just read what Jesus said, there are so many just places just talks about the financial issues in our life, because where our heart is, the money goes. So where the money goes to the place which is not, the money goes to the place where God doesn't want us to be, then your heart is not in the right place. But as we just decide to be the disciple of Jesus Christ, and as we dedicate our life to be the disciple of Jesus Christ, then our heart, if our heart is on the right place, and then our the financial support, our financial commitment should go to the exactly same way where our hearts feels. If the aspect of our life is just going to a different place, or the emphasis or the priority of our financial life is going to a different place, then that means that our priority is not in God, but in somewhere else. And this is a challenge for each one of us, especially the people who live in the modern the society like in the United States. This is one of the hardest things to discuss. And as a matter of fact, this is something I didn't really like to talk about at the beginning of my ministry, because I grew up in a culture, probably you too, that we do not want to talk about the money. But when I just finally realized that how we spend the money is actually where our heart is, then if we are not spending the money in the right way, then our heart is in the right way. So it is the challenge for each one of us to just think about where our finance go, how we use our resources. And also that the polity, just to give one more the definition for the members or covenant partners of the Eco Church, is that a faithfulness to Christ also involves each covenant partner's dedication of time and talent for the congregation's mission and the ministry. And I believe truly, especially now, that time is an essence. Time is something I feel like I don't have enough, and probably you feel the same way. If I have to choose time or money, I will choose time at this time. Because there's such a limited commodities. But now, even that limited commodity, such as time, God has given each one of us that time, specific amount of time. And those are the funerals that we had last week that really reminded me of the limited amount of time each person assigned. And again, that remember we talked about the cross is very unique to each individual person. That means such time too is very unique gift that given to each individual person. There are some life even taken away from us, even before their birth. And there are some people who spend many, many years on earth. But each time allocated to each person is a gift from God. And how we use that gift, how we use the time, reflects our faithfulness to God. So what we need to understand is that in today's portion, that Jesus calls us to take up our cross daily. That means that our membership at the Church of Jesus Christ is not only about what we do on Sunday morning or Wednesday evening or even the various the meetings that takes place at the church. Our membership of the church is based on our covenant. That means that we are determined and committed to our call to serve Jesus Christ, the Lord, every day and every place. When I had to do the photo shoot at the event that took place about an hour away from home a few years ago, I remember specifically that I tried to pack my equipment in several bags. But I was really wishing that I knew exactly what I was doing because I was not quite told exactly what I needed to do. I was told that this is a location of the event. Actually, I was given just the address and the time, and this is the way you go. And I tried to understand that location. I tried to just get exactly what do I need to expect from this event, and I didn't get the event, the detail of the event. For many events in which I took photos, occasions such as this makes me really nervous. So it took a tremendous amount of time and energy to prepare for this event. I had to think a lot. We all wish that we know exactly what to expect so that we can prepare for it. But the truth is that we often don't know exactly what to expect in life. And not only that we don't know what to expect in our life, but in many cases we still have to make decisions based on the limited knowledge we have. And we all hope that we know how to pack for our lives so that we will be ready for future events. But reality is that we often realize that we cannot fully prepare for ourselves for life. But still, as Christians, we are called to prepare. We are called to make ourselves ready to be the disciple of Jesus Christ. To those who desire to be a disciple and to come after Jesus, Jesus calls them to pack up and to prepare for the glorious wedding banquet God is preparing for us in heaven. So here we need to ask ourselves these three questions as we're preparing for this banquet. Do I know what it takes to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? And do I have too much of me and my agenda in my faith journey? And third question we need to ask ourselves is, am I ready to follow Jesus? And are you packed and ready to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? If you are, God will give you a determination in your heart so that you can carry it out to the end. Because as Paul says in the Philippians chapter 1, verse 6, and I am sure of this, that he who began a good work in you will bring it to completion at the day of Jesus Christ. Let us pray.